So, I'm going to be talking about spiritual perfectionism. What do I mean by that? Spiritual perfectionism is when you're striving for ideals that are possible, but they're not possible for who you are right now. For who you are at this moment in time, at this phase in your life, it's impossible for you to live according to that standard. It doesn't mean that it can't become possible as you continue to evolve and grow spiritually. But as you are today, it's impossible for you. And nonetheless, you keep trying to do it artificially and then being very hard on yourself when you fall short. This is a really common pitfall for seekers of truth, spiritual practitioners, and something that I don't hear talked about so much. I think it's ultimately rooted in emotion, but we can address it in a very philosophical way, which will be convincing and will actually change the way you think practically. And so I want to reference two books today, Bhagavad Gita and Meditations by Marcus Aurelius. And I haven't planned this talk at all. It's just I've been studying these things, and so I thought I'd just dive in and try to address these topics because it's become clear in my mind at least, and I'm feeling inspired. So let's go for it. And I want to start with Meditations by Marcus Aurelius. This is a classic of Stoic philosophy. And basically, Stoic philosophy really focuses on the development of your character. For them, spirituality really means developing your character so that you can align your decisions with the rational nature of the soul and the universe and the creator and come into a kind of harmony. And so let me give you a mixed review of this book because I have read this many times, gotten a ton of value from it. I plan to keep reading it because I think it's great. At the same time, there are some imperfections in it, which we should be aware of. And there is a kind of spiritual perfectionism that's inherent in the Stoic philosophy. So let me tell you what I mean by that. They're all about ethics, about morality, about doing the right thing, about developing your character, right? And so there's different levels of ethics or morals. There's theory and then there's practice. Let's make it simple like that. There's theory and there's practice. And so a cool thing about the Stoics, Marcus Aurelius included, is they really focus a lot on practice, on applied philosophy. And so they don't spend a whole lot of time sitting around arguing and debating different points and getting all theoretical and asking all these speculative, obscure questions. They really feel like, you know what? Let's just put that aside and focus on being a good person. So they're very practical in that way, very down to earth. And I think that's a good thing. This is something I really like about the Stoics. And because of that, when you read this book, you're going to get so much great wisdom about how to be a good person and live with integrity and character and make rational decisions. That's the real strength of this book and what's wonderful about it. And that's why I will continue to read this book. Let me tell you where it's lacking. And wouldn't you be surprised? It's in the theory part. And the theory part also creates the spiritual perfectionism in how the Stoics try to practice their philosophy. And so the Stoic theory is that human beings are inherently 100% rational. What do we mean by that? They mean that even when you're emotional, it's actually just a mistake in rational thinking. So they think that When you get angry, say if someone punches you in the face and you get angry, they think that there's a process in your mind where you say, I was just punched in the face. Is being punched in the face good or bad? It's bad. If it's bad, then is anger a good response? Yes, it's good. Then I will get angry. They think that for every single emotion you have, for every single thing you do and believe, that in your mind you're walking through these binary decisions of good and bad, and almost like you're doing a test. Almost like your entire life is just a test where your entire purpose is to always get the right answer, to always give the moral answer. And they believe that if you can just reject any ideas which are irrational and only accept the ones that are rational, that you will always live with proper character and integrity. Wild, isn't it? And so, this kind of view, in a way, it became a strength for them because it gave them such an incredible focus on ethical living. Uh, it became everything to them. And because they put so much focus on it, they developed incredible insights in like the realm of applied ethics and how to be a good person and live a good life. And there's so much value in it that even modern cognitive behavioral therapy is partially based on Stoicism. Modern cognitive behavioral therapy is basically a form of therapy where they sit you down and they talk about your struggles and then they help you to think about your experiences in a more rational way. And in this way, you temper some of the more extreme emotions that can be harmful and lead to bad decisions. And then that leads to positive changes in your behavior. So there's the cognitive part where you're talking about your feelings and then getting more rational reframes. And there's the behavioral part where you change your behavior based on how you've changed your way of thinking. But cognitive behavioral therapy doesn't ever assume that human beings are 100% rational. And I think it's pretty obvious that we're not. We have the capacity to be rational, but we're very much irrational. uh, we don't like to admit that, of course. We don't like to admit that, but it's true. It is certainly true. And so, what's the problem with this mistake in the understanding of human nature? What's the problem with thinking that human beings are 100% rational? Not even that they should be, that they are fundamentally 100% rational. This view of the self leads to a certain prescription that is unrealistic. They think, well, if you are 100% rational, then therefore you should be able to act rationally 100% of the time. And if you're not acting rationally 100% of the time, there's something wrong with you, and you are making fundamental mistakes within yourself that need to be corrected through Stoic practice and contemplation and philosophy. And so this is the spiritual perfectionism. Because of an unrealistic view of human nature, therefore, there's this unrealistic expectation, and it's actually impossible. If you become 100% rational one day, then it will be possible. But as you are today, that is not possible. And so it's a mistake to be so hard on yourself for falling short of an ideal which is not possible for you as you are today. And that's some of the shortcoming of Stoic philosophy. Now, let's go to the Bhagavad Gita. And I want to offer a contrast for you because there is a common misunderstanding of the Bhagavad Gita, and then there is what it actually teaches. And these are two different things. There's a common misunderstanding of the Bhagavad Gita, which leads to spiritual perfectionism. And then there's what it actually says. So let me contrast those two for you. In the Bhagavad Gita, it says that you are not this body, you are a spirit soul. In fact, this body is not you at all. It's just like a car or a dress that you temporarily occupy, but has nothing to do with who you are fundamentally. Who you are fundamentally is 100% a soul. That's the view of the Bhagavad Gita. Now, when people, that is correct. That understanding is correct. Where people make a mistake is when they try to apply that knowledge and they think, I am a soul, therefore, I should be able to act like a soul 100% of the time. And if I don't act like a soul 100% of the time, if I'm not completely independent and unmoved by all of the impulses and needs and desires of the mind and body, there's something wrong with me. I'm failing spiritually. I should feel bad about myself. I should feel ashamed about myself. I don't deserve to be among the community of spiritual practitioners. And I need to try harder. I need to be more sincere. I need to pray harder. And then I will properly act. This is spiritual perfectionism. Because Krishna very clearly and repeatedly says that you can't artificially act independently of your nature as a whole being, as a united body, soul, and mind. Ultimately, you are only the soul, but experientially, as you are now, you are mind, body, and soul functioning together. And you can't separate them artificially. You can't simply use the mind and body for your own purposes, but not be subject to their nature and influence. And so, what Krishna wants us to do, therefore, is to incorporate an acceptance of who we are in our current form as we are today, as we experience ourselves and experience our lives and our ability to make choices. We should integrate that self knowledge, knowledge of our nature, our svabhava, into how we make decisions and have relative values that will help us to curtail and move our natural personality in a positive direction. And so, if you're someone who's more in the mode of goodness, then he recommends self control and austerity and tolerance and learning knowledge. If you're more in the mode of passion, he recommends heroism and courage and leadership and things like that. And so there's different values for different people depending on your nature and your profession and um, whether you're married or unmarried. There's different values for different people, which are realistic for them as they are right now. But it's not like you can just say, well, I feel like it, so therefore I'm going to do it. It's like, no, we curtail and give a positive direction to the nature of the mind and body. But we don't assume that because you're not in the mind and body that you could do literally anything and you should just do whatever is perfect, right? So act according to your nature, which means do your duty, the duty that comes naturally to you, and then offer your activities to God. Don't be so attached to the result that you're just trying to maneuver and get things in this world as if that's going to make you happy to have stuff or even to accomplish things. Those are temporary. But there's a kind of purification that comes with just focusing on doing your duty with detachment, offering the results to God. And then on top of that, there's a whole practice of bhakti yoga where you're developing your relationship with God by hearing about Him, by chanting about Him, speaking about Him, remembering Him, and surrendering your life to Him. And so the ultimate culmination of Bhagavad Gita is uh, where Krishna says, "You should surrender to me." God says, "Surrender to me." And then Arjuna agrees to do that. Now we should take note of what Arjuna does after he says, "I'm going to surrender to you." Because if it were the case that because you are a soul and not the body, therefore you can act like a soul completely independent of the body, we would imagine that after Arjuna surrendered to Krishna, he would completely give up any mundane duties relative to this world, and he would only do spiritual activities. He would only be engaging in activities of worship and contemplation and study about his relationship with Krishna. He would only be doing things for Krishna, and that's it. But what does he do? He fights as a warrior because that's his nature as a warrior, and Krishna wants him to act in his service, but according to his nature, right? And so Arjuna fights. He doesn't retire and become a monk. And so similarly, when we completely surrender to Krishna, that doesn't mean that we artificially try to become something we're not. It doesn't mean that we engage in absolute self-denial. It doesn't mean anything like that because that's all spiritual perfectionism. And it's a big trap. It's a big trap, and it's not what the Bhagavad Gita teaches. And it just leads to a lot of discouragement and suffering and even loss of faith because you start thinking, well, I'm doing everything right, but it's not working. There must be something wrong with the process. It's not wrong with the process. You're not doing the process correctly. You're engaged in niyama agraha and kind of fanaticism. Utsaha Maya Nishtita Bhajana Kriya. There's different technical names that I'll throw out, and we don't have to get in now because I just want to keep this short. But anyway, so those are some thoughts on spiritual perfectionism. It all comes down to having a realistic view of human nature, and more specifically, a realistic view of yourself, and then setting your expectations accordingly so that you're able to succeed, so that you're able to set goals that you can actually reach, and then you feel like you're making progress. But if you have unrealistic formula of an unrealistic view of human nature or who you are or unrealistic expectations about what you should be able to do, you're not going to reach your goals because you're going to set them too high. You're going to try to do things that are impossible for you as you are today, and you'll get discouraged. And I don't want you to get discouraged. I've learned it the hard way myself, and so here it is. I've laid it out philosophically. I think ultimately we struggle with this. It's more of an emotional thing. It makes us feel good to think that we could do anything. But that's a misunderstanding, and we're better off just letting it go. So I hope this was helpful for you. If you have any questions, feel free to leave a comment or send me a message. And yeah, take care.